Welcome to episode 20 of the Brand Spotlight. We are featuring Josh and Graham of PrintWithMe. We'll learn all about it. This is episode 20. Welcome to our audiences on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live. We will be having a giveaway. We will speak about that in a moment or two. And this is also repurposed as an audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Graham. This is episode 20 of the Brand Spotlight of Josh and Graham of PrintWithMe. I will start off by telling you a little bit about the sponsor of the show. That's the agency I've been building up over the last several years. It's called Brands Connect, brands with a Z, and we focus exclusively on boutique marketing campaigns to work specifically with your brand, with your brand's needs. Without further ado, episode 20. Hello, Josh and Graham.
Thank you for having us, Joe. It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
For sure. So we'll get right in. This is Josh and Graham of PrintWithMe. We do have a giveaway for anybody who comments, whether it's Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or LinkedIn Live. We'll see your comments on the chat, and we'll select one of the commenters for a giveaway. We have 100 prints, black and white prints at PrintWithMe's over 600 location at one of 600 locations nationwide. Let's get right in. I guess our signature question, in a sentence or two, how would you define PrintWithMe?
Graham, you want to kick it off or you want me to start?
I'll take it. Sure, yeah, that's an easy one. Our brand mission is very simple. Our mission is to make printing convenient for everyone, everywhere.
Printing convenient and easy for everyone, everywhere.
Yep.
All right, that's pretty simple. And what does that look like?
So as you mentioned already, we're in 600 coffee shops across the country. So it's making it where it's a click on our iPhone app away to find somewhere that you can print a document, print homework, print a resume, anything you need. Just accessibility. That's what it means. A lot of younger people don't own printers these days, so it's bringing it to them. I call it sometimes like the Uber of printing, if that makes sense.
Sure. So just to recap, you're in coffee shops. You have printers in coffee shops. You call yourself the Uber of printing. I assume that means I either go to your website and I want to print a paper. It goes to the closest coffee shop, and then I go to the coffee shop and get my pages printed. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we have an iPhone app and we have a website. So super easy to find at a click of a button.
So basically, the way I describe it is person A is in a location and they're like, oh man, I need to print. So they go on their phone and Google printing near me. And if you have a coffee shop quarter of a mile to the right and a Kinko's a quarter of a mile to the left, I think most Americans are going to choose the coffee shop. So they're knocking out, they already need coffee, so they have to print and they can do something else while they're printing. They can get their coffee as well. Our CEO likes to use the example of Redbox. It's similar to a Redbox. You have a Redbox parked outside of Whole Foods. You go to Whole Foods, you get your dinner. You're like, oh man, my daughter wanted to watch a movie tonight. And then there's a Redbox right there and you pick up your movie. So it's one-stop shopping, which is what people love in our, what'd you call it, Josh? The Amazon Prime generation of one click and get everything.
Or if we're using more metaphors, it's like two birds with one stone. You know,
exactly.
They can get all at once. So
cool. So it sounds like what you're telling me is people would prefer to go to a coffee shop than an exclusive printing shop.
Yeah, and what we did a survey with our users, a while back, and the majority of them buy a coffee when they're in there. So it's kind of like a luxury experience to print something pretty simple, like a resume or homework or something. They get to find out, try a new coffee shop while they're there. It's a win-win for everyone. So they're very happy with it. Which actually, that's a quick side note. That's how I got on board with the company. I was working with my prior company. I needed to print some sales documents. I hadn't printed it because a print shop had closed the night before I got to it. So I was at a coffee shop earlier in the morning, and I just happened to stumble across the printer when I was buying coffee, and I just printed it off my phone. And it was just the accessibility. It was like it's stress relief to get something when I really needed it. So we say it kind of in a cheesy way that we're lifesavers, not literally, but like some of our people that use it have called it that, like, oh, you're a lifesaver, that type of thing. So yeah,
that's pretty cool. Wow. So you yourself found out about the company through stumbling over the printer.
Yeah.
My question is both in terms of the marketplace for it. Do you usually find that you're bringing more people to the coffee shop, or people who are at the coffee shop are finding out about the service and using it?
That's a good question.
So it's kind of a combination. Because we have, depending on the market, like Chicago is where we're based. Over in the last year, we have 70,000 users there already. So probably in that example, if they're already using us, they happen to be in a different neighborhood, then they pop into a different shop than they usually do. But we also have a pretty solid amount of repeat users and people that, it just makes common sense that if they're in there and they needed it, that they would use it. And so it kind of both. If you already know about it, you're going to look for it. If you don't know about it, it's super easy to figure out on the spot and use it. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll dive a little deeper. I just want to shout out some comments. As I mentioned before, for anybody commenting, we will be choosing a commenter and doing a giveaway. Lana, she's a top commenter. Hey, she just wants to say hi. And we have Michael on LinkedIn. So cool. Is it instant turnaround? Submission to printing in moments.
So I guess to answer that, maybe I'll give you like the high level overview of how it works, if that works. So basically, if they were to find our location, let's say Joe's print shop, for example, the shop would have. I'm saying that because of your name. It'd say Joe's print shop at printwithme.com. With each shop that we're in gets a custom email address. So they upload and email a document to that email. They pay on their phone, and the turnaround is just a matter of how long it takes for an email to send, basically. So probably a minute or less. That once they pay and submit the document, they get sent a 6-digit code, and that they can redeem on site when they enter it in on the printer. So yeah, maybe 2 minutes. It's a pretty quick. It's as quick as it probably could be. So instant, maybe not. You can't snap your fingers like a genie with the lamp to print it, but it's super quick.
Also, to compare, we're also in co-working spaces, like at a WeWork, for instance. And if you're at a co-working space and you try to print, you actually have to download a driver. So you have to go talk to their manager, download a driver, which is annoying because, Josh, you were saying you hate downloading stuff on your phone. That's
I do.
The manager doesn't want to talk to you. So while you can say our process does take a couple minutes, it takes way less time than some of the other methods that are already out there. And if you go to a Staples and try to print, they have a similar one. You can run into problems and not know how to do it. We have customer service 7 days a week. So if you do struggle, say an older person's not great with technology and they can't figure it out, there's a placard right behind the printer, which puts you in touch with our customer support team.
And that's a phone number?
Phone number and email, yeah. And then we have a live chat as well.
Okay, we'll dive a little deeper, but we do have another question from Michael. Do you have corporate rates for, let's say, a company has a bunch of remote employees? I think that's the question.
So there's a set range, and I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head for just the average user. I know that's going to vary for like a co-working space or a deal in place. Some of our co-working spaces, it's an amenity that's included with their membership. But in terms of if you're printing at some random coffee shop, it's a rate based on the quantity of pages you print. The more pages you print, the cheaper it is. I don't know that we have something specific for remote employees. That's just going to be on a case-by-case basis with each co-working.
Right. And if you're fully remote and you're working from home and you print at a coffee shop, then you could, of course, reach out to your work and see if they're willing to give you some sort of print job. But the coffee shop wouldn't have any sort of rate. But as Josh touched on, the co-working spaces, it's often free at the co-working space. The co-working space has the printer, which you're allowed to use for free, and that's all earmarked into the prices.
But the other thing I'd want to stress with it is really what we see with our users is it's primarily about convenience. The prices are very reasonable, but it's really you're printing a document here and there. You just want to be able to have it when you need it because Either you don't own a printer at home, you don't maintain it, your ink dried up, whatever the case is, you just want the document. So it's not going to break your bank to print a couple pages. No, I haven't really gotten any complaints about the pricing at all ever.
And yes, Michael likes your comment about the drivers. He wants to know who invented them.
Oh, it's gotten overkill with all kinds of things. I was in Dallas a couple months back, and I had to download an app to pay for parking to park there for an hour. They get overkill with install this and do this just for something basic. This can all be handled off of a browser. You don't have to install anything unless you want the app, just so that you can quickly find our locations.
Wow, thank you so much for addressing all those comments. Just in case anybody's tuning in now, we are with Josh and Graham of PrintWithMe. They are, as they explained, they have printers in coffee shops around the country, over 600 locations. And if you ever need a quick print job, you could always use PrintWithMe to print. And we are also doing a giveaway. Anybody who comments on our live stream, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, all the comments come to us. And we will choose a winner to have 100 free black and white prints, 100 pages of black and white prints. Let's go deeper into this episode. So I think we have a basic understanding of what your service is. You are in a service specifically. Let's go to the real consumer end. The consumer needs to print something. They search online. They find a printer in a coffee shop. They go to the coffee shop and they print. Now, I did ask a question earlier. I wanted to know if you find more people find it while they're at the coffee shop, or more people who are looking for a printer find the coffee shop. The reason why I asked that is I wanted to try to figure out if you're a more of a service for the consumer or the coffee shop, or totally both.
So it's a combination of both. I'll touch on, and then Graham, you can expand upon it. It's both, and that's the thing we call it. I call it like if you remember back in like high school biology, like a symbiotic partnership. That's kind of why it works with coffee shops. So it's a service because, one, the coffee shops are going to have happier people. If they're able to print something when they really needed it, that's stress relief. That's one thing to check off of your task list. But there's a variety of benefits we offer to the coffee shop. They get free marketing off of being on our app, being on our Google listings. People find out about it, they buy a coffee. So it's so it's a little bit of both. Or what do you think, Graham?
It's also going to differ where they are. So if you're in a high foot traffic area and you got that sign in the door and you're on Main Street, people are just going to stumble by and see it and walk in. If you're more up in the hills, you're not going to get people walking by and stumbling it. But when they Google printer near me, they are going to find you. So overall, I would say that more people find the printer and use it because they know it's there and they go to it. But as Josh said, it is symbiotic. It's drawing people in and adding value to the people who are already there. A lot of those remote workers who are in coffee shops working, they don't need to print, but all of a sudden you put a printer next to them and like, oh, it is helpful to take notes on the piece of paper. So people end up printing who didn't think they needed to print.
Yeah. A lot of people that do homework prefer the physical experience, and it's easier. Like me personally, we live in such a digital age with notifications and stuff. Sometimes it's nice to step away from the computer and do something on paper. And that's supposed to be a better way for people to memorize things too. Sometimes writing it down and yeah. Anyway.
Cool. What does a typical print cost with you?
Yeah. So the example I always use is it's 99 cents for one black and white, all the way down to 19 cents per page for 10 or more. But if someone gets like 5, then it's 50 cents per. So, and that is right on par and even cheaper than a lot of the other places you would print.
The question is what's the average coffee shop doing?
So that also varies like greatly. We have places in Brooklyn that are getting hundreds of dollars a month. We have places in smaller towns that aren't getting nearly as much, but it's all free to them. So they're all getting free money.
Yeah. It's directly proportionate to the size of the city and the location. So it's hard to put an exact number on it. It's just a matter of how busy they are in the city.
Oh, and the hours as well.
Yeah.
One of the hugest benefits is print shops are open standard work hours from like 8 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. So any coffee shop that's open past those hours is going to be wildly more successful. There's a few 24-hour bagel places in Brooklyn that we've been hammering trying to get because that would be so beneficial for us.
And I assume there's a rev share from the coffee shop.
Yeah, they get a cut of it as well. Yeah.
The question is that it's per item. It's actually not so much money and space, especially in many city locations, are very, very expensive. Do you get pushback to say like it's a lot of space, it's not worth the money, etc.? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so we anticipate that. In fact, sometimes we mention that right up front when we're talking to shops. The printer, it takes up less than cubic 2 foot by 2 foot area. I mean, it's one of the smallest printers you could expect to house. So usually that's ends up being a non-issue when they actually realize how small it is. Because I feel like sometimes people think about like a print shop and they picture this big machine that's super loud and intrusive, and it's not that at all. It's as minimalistic as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned like, do people have that issue with space? People mention that all the time. I actually had someone I called in New York and they said there wasn't space, and then I showed up in person and I was like, we could put it right there, and they're like, oh, deal. I'm like, so people, it's also a cold call. You call someone and it's like a barista, or they're working, so they're not in that like mindset to stop and really think. So sometimes it takes a few chats. So your question was, do they worry about space? Yes, but at the end of the day, is space an issue? Not really.
Rarely.
At the end of the day, if there's literally no physical space for a printer, then it's not an option. But we have printers in shops in Brooklyn that are like 400 square feet. We have some that are like, they have a shelf that comes out of the wall and it's on the shelf. And so there's nothing that wall was doing otherwise. And now you just put a shelf there and pop a printer.
Yeah.
And so it's utility that wasn't there before.
We have another comment in from
Perfect.
Lana. Again, love your business model. As a writer, I'm on board.
Oh, yes. Writers must be all about it.
Lana, I hope we're saying your name right. I don't know if it's Lena or Lana, but feel free to comment if there's a shop that you frequent, and I'll try to talk to them about working with us so that we can get it close to where you reside.
Thank you
Where
so
are you
much.
located again, Joe?
What was that?
Where are you located again?
I'm currently in the LA area. I'm between LA and New York a lot, but currently in LA. So we'll have to find some of your printers. To be honest, I don't have a printer because, and you'll love this story. Every time I tried to buy a printer in the past, I would need it once or twice. And then I would have to mess around with the ink and everything and the paper. And it was just so much cheaper and easier to just use a print shop.
Yeah.
Now I know about your company, so we'll definitely give it a try. I really don't print that often, but when I do, I have been using print shop. So
yeah. No, and that's been the experience, because something that people say often, they're like, isn't actually, even before I started with the company, my wife was like, isn't printing dead? And I'm like, no, it's just when people really need to print something, they really need to print something. If they're not printing stuff as often as they used to, because there's so many things you think about, like a bank statement or any number of things. It's like there's the option to just go digital, but that's not accounting for the time like you just illustrated, which is like most of the time I'm not using it, so I'm just outsourcing. So that's why it works, is that people in general print less.
Also, if people are printing less, that means there'll be less and less printers. So Josh, we just looked like 66% of Americans have a printer. I presume that number is going to drop over the years. So as that gets closer to below 50, we'll be even more in demand.
Now, are a lot of I can't imagine that the profit per page is that high. So are there a lot of shops that are concerned? They say it's just not worth the money?
No, because it's free to them. So they'll say, sorry to cut you off, Josh. This one really, really gets my gears going. They'll be like, is it worth it? You said it could bring us up to 30 customers a week. What if it only brings us 10 customers a week? And then I'm like, wait, sorry, we're going to bring you 10 customers a week that you didn't have before for free, and you're annoyed. So
I think really it's, people say all kinds of things that actually make sense why they might think that. It's just a matter of illustrating the concept and how easy it is and the value add to their customers and to them. And once they get on board with that, and that people will come in that wouldn't have otherwise and buy something, it's generally a no-brainer if they're willing to hear us out enough. Obviously it's more nuanced than that, but there's a reason 600 locations have worked with us so far.
3,000 including commercial.
Yeah.
Coworkers.
Yeah, we're also in a multifamily, the multifamily industry as well, but that's a separate division of what Graham and I do.
But my favorite example is the ATM one. The ATM is just a cash cow that sits in the corner, doesn't require anything from the store, and people come and you get a portion of the money. But most ATMs, I talk to owners, you have to pay for the ATM, whereas a printer is classier than ATM. It serves like a working class clientele, teachers, students, contractors, real estate agents, and it's free. So I don't really see much harm in hosting. If I had a coffee shop, my girlfriend and I talked about it. She's like, I don't know if I would do it. I was like, I would do it instantly.
We are pretty biased though.
Yeah.
Well, I'll admit that.
I'm also a numbers guy though. And so I see, wait, 0 down to get money? Too good to be true.
So it sounds like the main draw is not necessarily the rev share, but the more customers coming into the shop.
Yeah, I mean, it's just makes sense, and they look ahead at the website when they're going in. They buy a coffee. Going back to the data a little bit, we did a survey a little bit back where we asked our users voluntarily like usage and how much time they're spending in the store, and 70% of our users said that they spend money there. They buy coffee when they go in. So it's like when we illustrate it that way, that it's like people have been like, well, what's in it for us? Like, what do I get out of people using your printer? And it's like, they're there. They see your aesthetic. They want to come back. It just works. It's like a little printing adventure.
Now, who services those printers? The ink has to be changed. The paper has to be put in.
You're asking all the right questions. I appreciate how deeply you're thinking about the concept. So that is something that in exchange for, they get a cut of the revenue. They get some perks. They get the marketing. We auto ship it to them when it gets below 20%. It takes maybe 2 minutes to swap out the paper and ink. So when it gets low, we send it to them and we send them an email and say, hey, can you swap it out for us? And that's been a non-issue because, I mean, it's super easy to do. It's a very low time commitment to do that. Yeah.
Also, the way I always like to frame it is like, oh, am I really going to have to change the toner that often? I'm like, if you do, that means people are using the printer and you're making money. So that's one of my favorite objections, actually.
I've had printers before, and they usually have, especially the home printers, they get a lot of paper jams. Who deals with that?
Oh man, this guy's pressing us.
I like it. No, this is great. I really appreciate it because I mean we talk to amazing independently owned coffee shop owners all the time, and like the more that they ask questions like you're doing, obviously it's your job as the podcast host, but I'm like, man, you're really thinking about that. That's awesome that you're thinking about what works and not just brushing off the concept. So if there's a light paper jam, I mean, yeah, I've set them up myself, and it can happen because it's any device. There could be an error. But it is a high quality industrial brother printer. I mean, it's designed to print thousands of pages a month without an issue. If there is, on the rare occasion that it happens, it's pretty easy to open the tray and pull out a piece of paper. It's pretty intuitive. So it's been largely a non-issue when I talk to our operations team about the feedback with that. Is it hardly ever happens, to be honest.
Yeah, I was actually at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. It wasn't a paper jam, but it was out of paper. I didn't have my jacket. I didn't like look like a dude. So I kind of like looked around like, do you guys mind if I do this? And like, no one was looking at me. So I just like stocked it myself and did it. And it was super easy. As a consumer at this point, I was someone who needed to print. I was not annoyed that I had to put paper in the machine. It took 30 extra seconds. So
you had to know where the paper was.
It happened to be right there next to it.
Yeah. And then he gave himself a pat on the back. I'm just kidding.
So, and like you mentioned before, you deliver the paper, you deliver the ink. So
yeah, it's a pretty seamless process. And I don't know if Graham already mentioned this. We have a customer service line that answers generally in under a minute. If there's any technical issue, it's really like it's just the physical space the majority of the time that they're agreeing to give us. It's not, you're not suddenly the new print shop. You're not closing down your coffee shop to put a print shop. You're just adding value to what you already have and bringing people in. And once they see it, if you build it, they will come, is the expression our manager uses all the time. So.
And what kind of printing do you do? Just regular letter pages?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, correct.
Both black and white and color?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so just like the basic office needs.
Yeah.
There is an option for legal printing, which is a larger paper. You do have to pay a little extra per month for the add-on for legal printing, and then you do supply your own paper. We get a hammer mill paper, which is a really good recycled paper. They just unfortunately don't provide legal paper for us.
Yeah.
So that's pretty rare.
Okay. Sounds pretty cool. Now, the other question is, have you ever told a shop you do not want it to be there? Or what is your vetting process?
Asking the hard-hitting journalism. I love it.
I can actually handle this one. You mentioned like the prints themselves don't cost that much, and that is true. It does take us a while to be profitable, even in a standard location. So in a smaller location, it wouldn't be completely free. We would make them pay a small amount, which helps offset how long it takes us to go to business. But say like a small place in Hawaii wanted to do business, we would almost definitely say no, because not only does it take a long time to build up, when we're auto shipping that toner, we're shipping it farther away and having to pay more for it. So basically, like the smaller the shop is, the more it needs to be in like the town, the more it needs to be located near something like a college or like close to Chicago. If it's like in Chicago and we don't have to pay to ship the materials and we can just give it to you, like it's in a neighboring town, it's no big deal. So to answer your question, almost all of them are going to be allowed.
Yeah, we very rarely decline a shop. We just might adjust the parameters a little bit because we are a for-profit business. We want people to pay for our service and make money. But so it just depends. But it's pretty rare that we would say no, because that's our whole motto. We want to be as accessible to anybody anywhere across the U.S. So it's a very rare thing that we would decline. That we want to be all over.
Also, I'm sure it'll change after this podcast, but as of now, it's been more of us reaching out. It hasn't been like a flood of people reaching out to us. So if we got tons of smaller, 1,000 small coffee shops after this wanted to do it, we wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, we're not trying to prohibit anyone. We just go where there's a large amount of people that will use it first,
right?
As we build and expand.
Okay, so I will transition to a little bit of the marketing. I know we've really got into the guts of your business and a lot of the general business strategy. I love how you actually care about a profit. I don't hear too many people who care about a profit these days. So,
well, I think people want to be everything to everyone, and I think it's important to have a mission, and we do. But I mean, we everybody has bills to pay and mouths to feed too. So we're just trying to be realists about that.
Yeah. But the thing I want to ask you about is, I would imagine to build out an outreach system to go to coffee shops is the easier, or maybe easier is the wrong word. There's a system in place. You call 10 coffee shops, you get a couple of them signed up. How have you been marketing to the consumer? That seems like much, much harder.
Well, so one, Graham and I are still a little new, so I will admit that we don't have all the answers. I know that we're currently building out the marketing team a little bit more. So like on the multifamily side of it, it's been like, Facebook ads tailored to apartment managers. It's been social media posts. It's been, but I mean, the short term, we're trying to do it a little bit organically. Us talking with you, ideally, people say that we're humans and they're humans, and they see that the service makes sense and they want to go with it because of it or consider it. So, we're doing a little bit just person to person as well. But Graham and I are definitely not the marketing experts either. So,
yeah, I do know I'd say there's a little bit on each platform, as you mentioned, as the Facebook ads. We're kind of active on IG, and then even one of our employees found PrintWithMe via TikTok. So there's a little bit of us out there. But as Josh said, yeah, I think the word of mouth and like going into coffee fests, being a known presence at the coffee fest, I think that really helps us.
Cool. So it sounds like you don't have a magic bullet, but you really take a more holistic approach. You're also a little bit newer with the company, and you're focused really very much on the business development.
Correct.
You mentioned Coffee Fest. That's actually where we met. So Coffee Fest
Right.
is a
We sure
coffee
did.
trade show. It was mainly coffee companies marketing to cafes.
Yeah.
Coffee services marketing to cafes. So it was really cool. You stood out. You were very, very unique there. So that was a ton of fun. That's how we initially met. I think, I don't know if it was you, but someone mentioned that you actually have a very strong SEO presence. SEO is search engine optimization. So when someone searches for a printer, they will find you.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So we're building that out as well. We want it to be easy to find, even if people don't know about our company specifically. We want to be up there with, ideally, above print shops if we're dreaming big, like that they find it in every neighborhood, because we're in every neighborhood is the goal.
Cool. So you did mention you are relatively newer to the company. So I'm just curious about that timeline. How recently did you join, and whatever you're comfortable sharing, how, did you just respond to an ad where you recruited, or was there something that drew you to PrintWithMe?
Well, so I'll go first, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I literally found out about it because there was a printer in a coffee shop, and I was like, I actually knew the sales director from a previous company. We networked on LinkedIn, so I knew she worked at the company, but I hadn't really looked into what it was. So something just clicked. I saw it, and I practically needed it as a user, and I tell people that all the time. It was there when I needed it. I was in a pinch. I was stressed out. I was behind. I was trying to get my caffeine fixed for the day. I needed some documents I was supposed to drop off somewhere. And I was like, man, this is easy. This makes sense. I want to work for an organization that I believe in personally, that gives a useful benefit to people. I'm not disingenuous. If I don't believe in it personally, I don't want to mess with it. So that's how I got into it. I hit them up. They happened to be hiring when I saw that printer. I reached out to them. One thing led to another. And here I am a month in.
It's definitely more than a month, bro.
Ish. It's time is all relative.
My start date, or my start is very memorable. I was just reaching out on LinkedIn, looking at companies. I saw WithMe. I was like, what do they do? And I read up about it, and like, you'll see the reviews on Glassdoor, and they were like freakishly good. I was like, all right, smart company. They paid people to write reviews about themselves. Very nice. I like that. So then I hop on the intro call with the recruiter. I was like, all right, cut through all the BS.
Shout out Jenny.
Shout out to Jenny Bond. Is it as cool as the internet says it is? And she's like, actually, no, it's better. Like, I didn't even write one on there. It's to die for. It's like, all right. So I go to the next one, go to my manager, and he echoes the same stuff. Talk with the customer support manager. He echoes the same thing. And they seem to really care about who we were as people as well. There was a company summit to be hosted like just 3 weeks after I was hired. And they're like, do you mind? Like, I flew out to Chicago for Coffee Fest my first week, and then was supposed to go back to Chicago a couple weeks later. And they were like making sure that the traveling is okay with me. And I was like, first week on the job going to Coffee Fest? Like, absolutely. So it was great for me. My first day was Juneteenth. So my first day was a paid holiday. It's just one big vacation so far.
Sound like a PrintWithMe apologist. I guess we're pretty biased because they take good care of us, but no, it's been very solid so far.
Yeah, I mean, the show is about the consumer use for the brand, but I guess at this point, you're doing a great job trying to recruit people.
Sure.
Yeah. So I do want to, I guess we'll transition to, and we are both of you based?
I live just outside Austin, Texas.
Yeah, and I'm actually so we met in LA. I'm in San Fran. So I'm in the North Bay. We're actually probably moving up to the Pacific Northwest, like the Portland, South Seattle area, South Washington area is what we're supposed to call it.
Nice. And it's is the team entirely remote?
No, there are people in Chicago. Like if someone wants a printer, someone has to box it up, test the printer, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so our operations team and are based in Chicago, but we have probably the majority of our team is, at least on the sales side, is remote.
Wow. So it's really cool. Like, you're both relatively new to this, just 1 month for one of you and a couple more months a couple more months, and you're already strongly representing the brand. Seems like you're having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your role as business development? What's your main role in terms of business development?
I mean, it's kind of what we already outlined. We spend the majority of our time reaching out to coffee shops in a variety of ways, getting on their radar, getting on their attention, attending trade shows, and showing them, telling them the benefits we just outlined to you is pretty much, I don't know, 95% of our day. We just talk to people.
Wow. So it's you're taking a business development approach to sales.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. That's amazing. Now I want to, and how does it work? Everybody's responsible for a different region, or you're more global? How does that all work?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. So as we mentioned, like we're trying to expand first where there's a densely populated area. Like New York has our top users, Chicago next after that. So Graham and I split it up in conjunction with our manager Justin, and we just have good team communication and a CRM customer management tool to track who we're reaching out to so that we're not accidentally redundant. So it's just a matter. It's just the three of us reaching out to the whole country. So we have a lot of room to grow and reach out to people. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. And how big is the team in general?
We have, I think, maybe just now 40 employees for the whole company. So it's still pretty small.
So most people are, in terms of operations, you're to service all the leads you're bringing in.
Yeah, we have operations, and then we have a whole multi-family team that works with apartment complexes to provide a similar service, but to residents. It's the largest side of our sales team.
Interesting. So that's much bigger.
It is, yeah, it is.
So why is it? I'm gonna press a little harder. Why are they focusing on coffee shops if apartment complexes are much bigger?
Well, I mean, just diversifying our business model. We started out in coffee shops, and maybe you're going to get into this. I'll fast forward, and we can touch on it later if you want. But part of how we got started is our founder John needed to print something when he was headed to a concert, and basically just thought it into existence in terms of putting it in a coffee shop. So we're the OG of the sales side, and then we happen to branch out, and then we're seeing a lot of success in multifamily as well. So it's just wherever it works, we want to be. Basically, that's why we're trying to co-working spaces, apartment complexes, coffee shops, etc. Work on universities, etc.
Okay, so
sorry to cut you off, Joe. Your question was why are we focusing on commercial? It's actually not the biggest focus. The biggest focus we have been putting towards our marketing is on the multifamily and in the co-working spaces. But that's not to say we want to give up on the coffee shop opportunities. So,
and also coffee shops are open to the general public. So even as our multifamily side, it's kind of like they play off of each other. They hear about it, and that's just exposure and brand recognition in highly visible, highly trafficked areas. So it's awesome.
Okay, I do want to transition to the origin story, but I do want to first talk a little bit about the apartment complexes, and I think I'm seeing a little bit of a theme over here. So we didn't even mention the apartment complex, even though that's like the bigger part of your business. I just to talk a little bit about that. I assume that just like coffee shops have amenities, so there's apartment complexes. They have a gym. A lot of them will have a gym. A lot of them will have a lounge area. Yeah. And they're not necessarily looking, or they're probably not looking for outsiders to come in to use the print shop. Maybe they are. Maybe they do want to make revenue. Maybe not. But they definitely want to have a printer available for their tenants to have more, to have another amenity, whether it's paid for or not.
Yeah.
I would assume that many of them had in-house printers where they email the receptionist, and the receptionist had to go into their emails and print it out. Whereas
you're dead on. You're dead on. And I mean, that's why it works. So it is for the residents. It's not an open to the public printer. It's a paid service where they pay a set monthly fee in general to provide that to their residents. But really what it is and why it matters to them is it's less about the money, but more, I mean, I used to live in an apartment complex, live in a house now, but the apartment complex, the multifamily managers are just spread thin. Sometimes they'll be the only person. There'll be a queue of people wanting to come up and tour the apartments, do this, do that. So they offer the business office, like the public or the resident use computers and everything like that as an amenity, but they're having to deal with it every time. Okay, that's how it worked at my old apartment complex. Oh, you want to print a document? Sure, it doesn't cost you anything, but you email me the document, I'll print it. It doesn't always work. It's not seamless. The process is choppy, and it's taking that mental load and responsibility off their plate and outsourcing it to us, from restocking the paper to our customer service line to as much as we can control remotely. It's a relief. It's really offering a pressure relief for the apartment complex managers. Is kind of how I would put it.
Right. There's different pain points for each vertical. The coffee, the other reason we like staying in coffee is it's the easiest sale. You can call the coffee shop, like, hey, can I talk to owner? He's like, yeah, this is the owner. What's up? They're like, oh, we can provide you with a free printer. And I literally had someone say yes right off of that. Didn't even like tell him all that. They just needed a printer. And he's like, yeah. Whereas at a co-working space, it's like more of a corporation that jumps. So it's like it takes a while to get in there. But the pain point for them isn't getting more people in.
You said co-working, and he means multifamily.
I was going to do both.
Okay, gotcha.
So at a co-working, they're there to work. They need to have a printer in the establishment. So that management job, that company now has to take care of that printer. So the biggest benefit we provide to co-working and multifamily is that we service the printer. So now let's go back to the example you were saying, Josh. Let's say you go to print in your community living space and you print 1,000 pages. And you're like, yeah, I'll pay for it. No worries. And then you pay for it. Now that place is out of paper and ink. The manager has to leave to go get more paper and ink. So that's where PrintWithMe comes in. Whenever it gets below 20%, we auto ship the toner, paper, and ink, which makes it so much easier for the multifamily and the co-working spaces.
Yeah.
I'll press a little bit on the co-working spaces. I've been to co-working spaces. There are already printers set up like that. There are printers where you do have to install a driver. So that's a little bit annoying, but some you don't have to install a driver.
Right.
No, I've been to ones that you don't have to install a driver. You just sign in, you put the code, and it's all automated. How have you found competing with that?
Well, yeah. So those printers work a portion of the time, but our printers work at a higher percentage. But the biggest benefit is if that printer stops working and our printer stops working, the co-working team has to reach out to someone to get it serviced. Whereas we get a notification, we're probably going to know it's not working before you know. And we either send you a brand new printer or send someone else to fix it. And there's also like huge fees in getting someone from a different company to come in and do it. Whereas we do it as part of the package.
Yeah. So ours is generally more cost effective, and there's a reliability increase for sure. That we've seen in contrast to those.
That's what's fascinating to me is I'm going to make an observation, and I don't know if it's true. You could tell me your thoughts on it. But it seems like that the printers that the co-working spaces have had until now were built around. They may have even been built for the co-working model, but they were based around the concept that there is an operator, there is someone who will maintain it.
Right.
They did the consumer end of having an individual print match an individual consumer through those codes, but they didn't necessarily create it so that there's no operator needed. There still needs to be an operator to make sure that the ink and the paper is full. Whereas in order to make it efficient for the coffee houses, you really had to outsource that because coffee companies wouldn't agree to that. But once you did that, that automatically became an amazing, valuable tool that apartment complexes and co-working spaces could use the benefits of.
Right. You're explaining it very well. Well said.
All right. I guess we know a tremendous amount about your business.
We do in great depth. Yes. Great question.
Yeah. Now I'm very curious about your origin story. You hinted at that. You said John was on his way to a concert. He needed to print something, and he had the idea and just magically created it. Let's hear more about that story. I know you're not John, but I'm sure being in the company, you've heard about that story. And if you could tell that over to us and how that affects your business today.
Yeah. So when people say printing is dead, there are a lot of things that are done electronically, but a lot of things that aren't. My favorite example of someone who needs printing that people don't know about is contract workers. You can't just show up on a job site and start hammering stuff. You need to have like a badge that shows you're a contract worker. Same with concerts. Nowadays, I guess concerts might have like the QR codes where you can do it. But 8 years ago when John did that, that was not the case. And so he's driving to his concert and then realizes, oh my God, I don't have a way to print. So then he has to do my favorite example, which is Google printer near me. He pulls over, goes to his local coffee shop he's always at. And I think he has the aha moment. It would be so nice if I could print here. But he had to go drive to like a Kinko's or a FedEx. And that's where he's like, I don't ever want to do that again. So then he actually linked up with his local coffee shop in Chicago and set it up there.
So when you say he linked up with his local coffee shop in Chicago, he developed the software, he hired someone to do the software. There seems to be a lot to go into that.
Yeah, so there's actually a photo of our Instagram of him at the store buying a Brother printer. So he just bought a Brother printer and then probably partnered with one of our IT guys about how to write the code in there. And then it's evolved over time. It's not the exact same process we have now, but
yeah,
a pretty basic. Like before, there weren't the release code was optional. So if I was in the car, I could be driving up to the shop and then pay to print and print without a release code. And it's just waiting for me. And then now we're like, no, that's not a good model. So we've removed that. So I'm sure it's evolved over time. But yeah, the basic concept that we still have was.
Yeah, to get more specific with it, you were asking how it got developed. He used to work at Grubhub, and he had his old coworker from there that he kept up with helped him develop the software.
Nice.
Okay, that makes sense. There was a missing piece. I was looking for it.
Yeah. But obviously it's become more and more streamlined since then, as startups sometimes tend to be, to make it the seamless thing that it is now. So it's come a long way since it started in 2014 was back when that happened, that he was like, oh shoot, I need my concert ticket. And it just blew up since then. And what's cool about it is, I mean, it's still like his pride and joy. I mean, he goes and sets up printers himself sometimes when we ask him to. So he still has he's still very invested in it. He's not detached from the process at all.
That's amazing. Wow. So you actually have, it sounds like you do have some sort of relationship with him.
Yeah, we're pretty tight knit team for as how I've worked for larger corporations where I might not have ever even met the CEO because there's thousands upon thousands of employees. This is like, I mean, technically I could dial him up, or I mean, like I have a meeting with him on Thursday. So he's very, very in the trenches as much as possible, while also, thinking high level strategy and those types of things.
Wow, it sounds like so much fun. What I guess the next question is, do you have a little bit more detail how he went from one machine in his local Chicago shop, which probably did not have an automated system to tell him when it's 20% ink is left and 20% paper is left? How did he go from there? That's 2014 in a couple of years to have 600 locations. Obviously, I don't expect you to know the whole story, but just if there's any certain timelines that you know about that you can share.
Well,
sure.
I do know one little nugget. One thing we left out was that he was at a co-working space called Next Door Chicago, and that's where him and other entrepreneurs would study and tinker. And so that is there's a post on our LinkedIn or Instagram about how he used that place, and that's where he developed the concept of PrintWithMe. So I'm guessing he talked to some people, maybe networked with the developer, and then that's how it was built up over time. And then as far as you said, when did it get from 3 shops to like 600? He shared a slide with us which showed how many employees they had, and it was still in like single digits after 3 or 4 years, and then it really took off from there.
And to dive into that a little bit deeper with what you're asking, part of how it happened is he was both the CEO and the salesperson contacting people all over the country. I mean, there's people where I was just talking with the shop the other day that launched in 2016, where he was the person that contacted them. Like, so it was very like grassroots, which I know you work with, like, you talk with a lot of like CPG brands too. It was kind of like that in that sense, where it's like, look, just like, pull it up by your bootstraps type of like just grit and contact a lot of people as it grows and figure it out. I mean, it's probably more nuanced than that, but yeah, I mean, he just really dived in to make it happen and grow.
Wow, that's amazing. And has he done any raises, or it's all been self-funded just from the profit?
Yeah, I believe he has had some funding. I don't actually think that I know all the details on that, unfortunately.
No worries. What's the general projections for the business in terms of what's your goals for growth now?
Well, for one, me personally, I'd love to double and triple the locations. I mean, I can't speak for the whole business as well as he could, obviously. So I guess that's where it would be more useful for you to have him as a founder. So I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I mean, just more locations at a at a high level. We want the more locations is more money and more access to people. So we're trying to grow at a tremendous rate by, I mean, grassroots, contacting people one by one, proud coffee shop owners, and we want to work with you, and here's what's in it for you, and just skyrocketing that up, and coffee shops and networking, and see where it leads us, and try to embody the motto that Graham said. It's here, let's pull it up again. I'll read it again so that it's here you have it, Graham, so that we can circle back if somebody has joined since the 53 minutes ago.
Sorry, what were you asking me to do, Josh?
The motto.
Yeah. Absolutely. The mission is to make printing convenient for everyone, everywhere. And, we were talking about the scale. John likes to give the example of the red box. You're at a red box, and there's one wherever you need 5 minutes away. So as we said, it can take a little bit of time for the machines to become profitable. So we couldn't just put a machine in every single coffee shop over the country right now. But within the next 10 years, we can ramp up to that. And then to answer your question, Joe, about the funding, it raised $1.9 million in 4 funding rounds. Last round was in 2017. So we needed some help back then, and now we're self-churning and just taking off.
Also, to put a more specific number, my manager Justin is watching the live stream, and he messaged me and he said we have a goal of 3,800 locations by the end of the year. So we have a lot of work to get there across both multifamily and commercial. But I think that as we already talked about, we're really personally invested in it. We take a lot of pride in it. So that's an incredible motivator, the personal investment. Man, there's a quick comment. Michael said, next phase 3D printing. I don't think we're going to be doing that, but that is funny. I've never even used a 3D printer. That's a interesting idea.
Cool. Wow. Thank you so much. I know we have a LinkedIn audience, YouTube audience, Facebook audience. If you have a dense location, or even if it's not dense, and you want to bring people into your location, reach out to Josh or Graham. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you.
I mean, if you've tuned in this far, you pretty much know the concept as extremely well. So thank you all for listening. If you watched all 55 minutes, very kind of you.
Wow. Thank you so much. So yeah, if anybody reach out to Josh or Graham, they're on, you could, just go to printwithme.com. I'm going to ask you the last question. But before that, I just want to thank the audience on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn Live for tuning in. As I mentioned, we'll be doing a giveaway in a minute. We'll select one of the commenters to give them 100 prints of black and white prints from any of the Print With Me machines in any of the 600 locations, over 600 locations. This is episode 20 of the Brand Spotlight. As I mentioned, we're streaming live on all those platforms, and we're repurposed as an audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And just for the last question, before that we'll do the giveaway. Are you able to see the comments?
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if Josh or Graham's going to choose.
Oh, we just picked someone.
You'll just pick someone.
Oh man.
Well, I'm. Do you mind if I pick?
I do not.
Well, Lena said she's a writer, so it feels pretty reasonable to give her a shot at it. So congratulations, Lena.
Okay, Lana, congrats. You won. We'll contact you after the show. You won those prints. Thank you so much for participating. The comments really, really boost engagement of the show. If you're listening on the audio, if you ever join the live stream, you can get more information on thebrandspotlight.com to join the live streams. A lot of times we have giveaways. And now for the last questions. Any parting words, and where can we find you?
So feel free to like you said, reach out on printwithme.com, or you can connect with either of us by our names just as they're listed on LinkedIn. But the last word is, man, check out Joe's podcast. Thank you for listening, and check out his marketing services he mentioned at the beginning. See what he's all about. He's an awesome guy, and work with him. He didn't pay me to say that.
Yeah, the same sentiments. I mean, you guys are here. Joe's podcast is putting out brands that are doing the right things. I listened to that one you did with the cookie dough guy. I love a sweet treat, but what's better than a sweet treat than like a healthy sweet treat? So, he's putting out brands that are helping the environment, doing the right thing. Our company is very eco-friendly as well. If you think about using Print with Me, that means you're not using your printer at home, which has 300 pages of paper just sitting there not being used. We recycle printers as well. If we sell a printer to a co-working space that doesn't need their old printer, we go ahead and refurbish, recycle, reuse the printers as needed. So we have a
whole green initiative. If you want to check us out on our site, that talks about the 100% recycling paper and all of that, and that process of how we try to take care of the environment as we use printers.
Yeah, you don't want to hammer in that we're a very forward-thinking company. As the world does get more do it all from your phone, we're something that can be done from your phone at places that are convenient to you that you're already going to.